Guys, Robert Randolph here, Kayak Fishing Spotlight, back for episode number 5. And today we are going to talk about my favorite kayak fishing podcast. So, uh, for those of you that don't know, I've owned a landscaping company for the past 12, 13 years. So, when this podcast boom started a few years back, I was right on board with jumping on. I was already listening to music all day, and the podcast explosion allowed me to uh, find a lot of different information through, you know, the podcast that people were putting out. Being able to listen to tips and techniques of the way other people were fishing really accelerated me getting back into bass fishing and learning some new techniques. And just a lot of times it's just a lot more entertaining than sitting and listening to the same, music over and over. If you're sitting on a mower, or you're weed eating, or maybe you're sitting at the computer doing Excel spreadsheets all day, you're going to hear the same songs over and over after that long period of time. Whereas podcasts, you go from one set of information to the next. All the podcasts are usually different, and you're just gaining a ton of knowledge that you really, would take you much longer without that podcast world to get. So let's go over these 3 podcasts. We're going to start out with the Paddler's Playbook. It's hosted by Drew Turner. He started it in 2020. They have 97 episodes, so quite a big catalog of episodes to choose from. He is on the Gulf Coast of Texas, and he does a lot of redfish, trout, flounder. Uh, Highly entertaining and informative podcast. Let's take a look right here, and he's talking a little bit about some guides and the difference between the way we normally fish and the way guides fish or think. So let's check that out.
Too with guides. The thing about a guide, you and I may think the exact same way. Okay, here's where the fish should be feeding. This is where we're going to go. The decisions that guides know when to say, okay, we're moving from this area.
Yeah.
Where most normal fishermen, they're like us, we're just like, all right, we gonna grind this out all day. I'm gonna grind this area out until I find the fish because I'm here. This is where I picked. I know that they're gonna be here, so we're gonna grind it out till I find them. Where a guide is quick to like, all right, we've been here 15 minutes. Nobody's got a bite. We're moving on to the next area because I've been
Yeah.
out with guides before too. And I'm like, damn, we're leaving already. Like we just got here. Like we ain't even hit the shoreline.
So that's a little clip of a recent podcast from him. He's talking about guides and the difference. And, that's a great point because you get it stuck in your head, whether you're out fun fishing or you are tournament fishing, which Drew does a lot of redfish tournaments. Uh, so, I do quite a bit of bass fishing kayak tournaments. And, you get in your head where you're going to start at, where you think you're going to catch the fish. And I find myself not being able to change gears and change locations fast enough. And then you look up and it's already 12:30, 1 o'clock, and you're like, oh my gosh, where's the time going? Well, guess what? If a guy does that and he spends too much time in each place, he's going to finish the day with his clients not catching a lot of fish. And sometimes that does happen anyway, even if you're changing areas quickly. But the reason the guides change quicker than your average angler is because they are getting paid to put fish in the boat. And if you're not catching them in an area after 10, 15 minutes, they're not going to, they're either not there or they're not going to bite at that location. Now, with the uh, technology the way it is now, a lot of times you can see them on your side scan, or if you have forward facing sonar, you can see them on your live scope. But just because you can see them on there doesn't mean they're going to bite. So that's one of the disadvantages and the things people have to overcome when they do have that technology is, when to say when, as far as, um, as far as when it's time to go to a different spot. A little bit more about the Paddler's Playbook. Like I said, 97 episodes. They have all types of discussions on there. I like the podcast. It weighed your family time versus your time on the water. That was a great one. And that topic is one that a lot of people struggle with. You want to get out there and you want to fish, but you also have family obligations. So you have to kind of make sure you're balancing those two things. But there's a lot of reviewing gear. There's a lot of bait and tackle discussions and decisions. How do you rotate through your baits and tackles? How are motors affecting the kayak fishing world? Um, it's a great podcast to begin listening to, and like I said, a big catalog of episodes that really cover almost every aspect of the kayak fishing. They also have a lot of freshwater kayak anglers on there. I know Drew Gregory was on there talking about some kayak designs. So, Paddler's Playbook, you guys go check that out. And that's going to bring us and roll us right into probably what I think is the most entertaining. I'm going to call it a kayak fishing podcast. Both of these guys that are the host fish out of kayaks. They do have a lot of boat fishermen and content creators that use boats. They have a lot of those on the podcast. And this is the Bass and Brews podcast with Alex and Paul Hills. Alex Casanagua, I'm probably not saying that right, but that's close. And Paul Hills, which is Paul Roberts. Um, I know Paul personally. I have fished quite a bit with him, and he is one of the most entertaining guys. And so is Alex. Both of those dudes mesh so well together. Alex started the podcast, I believe, in late 2021, and they're about 100 episodes deep now, and they're pretty spot on putting one episode out a week. And they're a long form podcast. This podcast that I'm doing, I usually shoot for around the 15-minute mark. I want to give you guys some information, give you guys some different content creators to go check out. But I'm not necessarily here to take up 2 hours of your day with entertaining. But Alex and Paul do a great job of that. Let's play a little clip. This is a clip. They had Mikey Balls on there, who is also a great content creator, great fisherman. So I enjoy his stuff too. But they had him on the podcast, and let's listen to what these guys are talking about.
They're fishing for a lot of money, and they see that fish come off, or that fish comes off at the boat, and you see the pain, and the sadness in their face because the camera is zooming in on them, and they want to go kick that camera guy off the back of the boat right now. But yeah,
I think they catch some special incident. It was Gerald Swindle, I think. The second year of MLF, when it was either the first or the second one, where he had that kind of famous breakdown where the camera just sat on him. Yeah, and that was G-Man should have had YouTube at that point. That was a very such a real tone. I remember watching that live and then them cutting to him where he was like, "Yo, the stress," and just him breaking down his whole that was compelling.
So there you have it. Those guys talking about they're talking about MLF and the filming and the way that that's set up, and just the instant pain and agony that you can see on some of those guys' faces when they lose a fish. I like that format as well, as far as you're getting the live feeds and you're getting the updates, and that you get to the end of these tournaments, and you can, usually they are going to have the top 3 or 4 on camera, and you get to see those moments where somebody has that moment where they find out that they've won. And then you see those moments where you lose a fish or you find out that you're just a few ounces short. And that's what people want to be entertained by. And that's, I can't say enough about that Bass and Brews podcast. You never can tell what you're going to get. I will tell you that you may want to have some headphones on. That's not something you probably want to be playing at the kitchen table at dinner in the background with your kids around, because they light it up pretty good. And so just be aware of that. But it is one of the most fun and entertaining podcasts out there. So my hat's off to you guys. Keep up the great work. You guys go check out the Bass and Brews podcast. Last but certainly not least, this is to me, the most informative set, and I say set of podcasts because it's the Serious Angler Podcast Network, hosted by Bailey Egbert, Andy Full, and Adam Deacon. They also have a couple of other guys on there that when they do the fantasy, which is the clip that I'm going to show, they're kind of talking about some stuff that just happened. Let's show that clip, and then we're going to go back and we're going to talk about these guys and what a great job they do.
Speaking of which, other guys that might not be fishing, I think he'll fish, but sucks to see what happened to Felix. I don't know if you guys seen that.
Oh yeah, got hit by a bus trailer.
Not him. Let's not him.
His trailer got hit by a bus.
His
Sorry.
boat
Car
got hit by a bus.
His car accident. Yeah.
Felix is fine.
So they're talking about the car wrecks Felix got in, and it totaled his Phoenix boat, and talking about whether he was going to be able to fish. But you have the Serious Angler Podcast, Business from the Bass Boat, and the Lure Lab. So the Serious Angler Podcast is Bailey and Andy's deal that they're on most of the time. Adam Deacon hosts the Business from the Bass Boat, which is more of the business side of bass fishing, and I find that very informative. And he touches a lot on content creation on the Business from the Bass Boat. And then the one that they have recently added is the Lure Lab. Total episodes, I am not sure, but I think it's around 388 total episodes. So you have a ton of content there to choose from. So those are my 3 that I listen to, and really you got 5 in there if you want to count all of those from the Serious Angler Podcast Network. We did feature Bailey's YouTube channel on here, Be the Fish, and that I don't know how the dude does it, but he is churning out YouTube videos. He is doing all the podcast stuff, plus he's keeping up with a full-time job. So my hat's off to all those guys. But the Serious Angler Podcast is highly entertaining, highly informative, a lot of tips and tricks on bait making. They give up a lot of juice every week on there, and you can go back and find different things from different times of the year, what lures to throw. They do a lot of stuff with do-it molds. They're making their own lures. They have some content on that as well, but there is plenty of stuff in there for you to choose from. And that's going to bring us right to the end of our time today. So I appreciate you guys tuning in. I appreciate the views on YouTube. So if you haven't yet, subscribe, like the video, leave some comments below of some other content creators that you would want to see. It helps get this content out in front of other people so people can discover different YouTubers and podcasters, different content creators who all care about the kayak fishing scene. I appreciate it. If you're listening on podcast, thank you. That is growing just only after the few episodes we've had. So I appreciate that. And you guys have a great week, and I'll see you next week.